gonna keep things moving. This poem is called "The Pen is Mightier Than the Sword." Let me start out by saying I hate cliches, but they are relevant to this spoken word, so please forgive my first offense. You have to see it to believe it. So take a closer look at me. Look at this jacket, these pants, these shoes, and don't get me started on my meticulous beauty regimen. My point is, I put a lot of care into how I present myself, but it's all just a cover for how ugly I feel inside. Now look at these scars. Look at these tally marks that I've recorded on my skin like a criminal rakes rocks against the wall in prison, day after day, cell after cell. Do you want to know why? Well, so do I, but all I know is I don't just judge myself, I jury and execute myself every time I make a mistake. This is hard for me to admit, and it's not something I'd like to do in front of an audience, but I have to put my story out there. Not to justify my actions, but to show you that it's never too late to rebuild yourself, even in the face of your most defining tragedy. I know that sounds cliche, but I lived through it when my dad passed away after an accident that could have been avoided without booze, which I used to mitigate that pain to the point that I blamed myself. In that moment, it was my fault, and I couldn't admit it to anyone, so I selfishly did the deed I felt I needed to because bleeding makes sense, while trying to understand why someone is leaving you only leads to it. I remember my first open mic. It was like I finally found a way to put down the blade. I remember all the people I got through to. Suddenly, I can take my plate and use it to provide insight. And that's my destiny. No, I'm not ashamed to live with my history because it's not my fault how I was raised or why I've lived through so much tragedy. But I still feel ugly inside because it had to get to this point after so many years of feeling worthless. Now I can share this sentiment because I know I was never alone, and neither are any of you, so don't be afraid to pick up the phone, even if it's 2:30 in the morning and you're driving yourself crazy trying to write a poem that shares your scars, however deep or plump or red they are, like I did every night last week. As hard as it was, it made me realize just how important it is to have support. Really, all you need to know is one last cliche, because this ink may sink in, but I will never break my skin again, because my reticence ended when I dropped the sword and picked up the pen.
Poetry!